way out. Throughout the process of making that record, we realized that the issues that we had were not going away, and they were not going to be dealt with in a sort of reasonable way.
Come on, you can do it.
That ended up being our last record, which I guess is aptly named in retrospect. Don't need to go into necessarily as to why the books broke up. Your imagination is probably close enough.
The damage was done on so many dimensions. It reached parts of me that I don't have conscious access to. Doing nothing doesn't help. Like, I have to make new music in order to heal.
And you start seeking out more fertile territory.
Trying to play it so slow for y'all, but I think maybe you got the idea. We'll check with the fellas and see if they think we got it right enough so you can get the gist of how the finger's working if I might have messed up a little tiny bit on that one chord.
I think of myself as not a particularly charismatic person on stage. I don't feel like I have that ability to be a real frontman and suck up the attention.
Cut it! You gotta cut it, Nick. Ah, shit. Like you just backed it up.
You know, I can't do the rooster and stuff like that. It's just never gonna happen. It's just not who I am.
You can do it. We'll move it.
We can
Make it right.
exactly.
The books felt like a glorified karaoke in some way. And that's how the new band started.
We're a garage band.
So it was the perfect opportunity to just let it all go and try something totally new and kind of give myself the freedom that I wanted longer term in my career to kind of try anything. Where I am now is going after a sound that was more live and could be performed in a louder way.
My studio is a tractor garage that I changed into a recording studio. I just basically put a floor in and insulated it, and here we are. You know, if I get an idea, I just run out to the studio day or night and just get it down before I forget it. There's a rule up here on this mountain that you can't have a parcel of land that's less than 5 acres. And so that means that there's always going to be space up here.
I really wanted a chance to work with a drummer especially. And so when I met Sean Dixon, it really opened my eyes to a new way of composing.
It's kind of it's a little Gene Groupa-ish, a little sing sing sing.
Like, I feel like, again, I'm kind of looking for fills and transitional elements. Do you want to click or?
Yeah, probably. You don't want me to?
Nah, I don't mind.
It's not more of a pain in the ass to.
My whole life is a pain in the ass. Do you have a metronome on your phone? You do? That's cool. Well, I feel like if we had a metronome and let's see, if I had it in my ear, no, we would both need it. then I could actually, you could hit on the 1, and I could set it back up on the 3.
And so we just,
Yeah, and so the whole video would be in a tempo already.
I have headphones that we could both listen to it. We'll just take one ear each.
Oh, okay.
GoPro, take 2. There's a fine line between making experimental music and experimenting on your audience. I never have a good day in the studio. Every day is unbelievably painful and frustrating. Half the time you want to be lost and really just stabbing in the dark. You have to decide when you wake up in the morning which person you want to be that day, like whether you're going to try to like discover new territory or secure what you have. Because it's just me in here most of the time. It takes a long time to put these things together. So I change quite a bit over the process of making a record. If the record takes too long, the industry isn't going to wait for me. They're just going to like move on. So there's a window of opportunity to like get it done and released by the end of the year. That's the only way I'm actually going to be able to survive financially. Alright, guess we should watch it.
Sorry.
What should you expect? You play Chutes and Ladders?
What is that?
You never play Chutes and Ladders? There's ladders, and there's chutes, which are slides. And you have to get from the bottom to the top. So you want to go up the ladders, but you don't want to go down the slides.
I think I have played it.
My first ever tour overseas, over in the UK, it happened to coincide with my wife's first pregnancy. Molly was maybe 4 or 5 months pregnant and had this unbelievable nesting instinct. I never seen anything like it.
We were living in an old Victorian house in North Adams. It was really cold and we could not afford to heat it. So our bedroom was probably about 40 degrees in the winter and I could not imagine having a baby there.
She's just like, we need a house, like now. If you can find one, then maybe the bank will give us a mortgage. We'll see. She's like, okay, I'm on it. So I was on tour, and I got a picture, or a series of pictures in an email from her. She says, basically like, this is it.
I looked at it in the middle of the winter, and it was just slush and fog and this really ugly house. Yeah, I mean, it looked terrible, but something about it spoke to me. It seems really crazy now. I don't know. I have no idea why. Yeah, I mean, it seems really crazy that I would have done that now.
We knew that we needed to make some changes to the place before Sep came, and so we got to work right away. We had no experience, none. I mean, I guess we had sculpture classes in college, so we kind of knew what tools were called, at least. We figured, you know, there's only so many ways you can attach 2 pieces of wood together. I have this image burned in my mind of Molly working a giant miter saw with a 9-month pregnant belly. Amazing.
marking where Pep's placenta is. We've been meaning to plant a tree here. We haven't gotten around to it yet.
Yeah.
But there it is.
Bye.
What's with Matilda? Coming home from tour is always like, wow, a lot has changed. Like, my kids look different. They're growing so fast these days as well. I'm looking at Asa right now. He's, I think he grew like maybe an inch in those 2 weeks that I was gone. You know, just life kind of went on without me here.
I'm on you. I got you. Oh. That's truly nasty. My own damn fault for letting them go this far. The thing about things that grow is every year they grow faster.
Don't pick it. As far as growing things in the ground, it's always gone really well here. I definitely dove right into it. It's a really intuitive thing. Thanks.
Molly can grow anything.
This must look funny.
She just knows how plants work in a way that is completely beyond me. So when we were designing the house, we got really interested in this idea of the passive solar design. So that is to put as much glass on the south as possible so that she could get a jump start on the growing season. I went to Williams College. The reason I chose that school was because I could study both art and science.
Am I getting greedy? Goddamn.
Really thinking that my career would end up being in science and probably in chemistry.
The question is whether I will go to an art opening covered in pond muck. And I think the answer is yes.
And then I had a swollen lymph node. And I had it for really years before I started to worry about it, but it kept getting bigger. And eventually I ended up seeing a doctor about it, and he's like, you should have that out. I was diagnosed with Hodgkin's disease. The surgeon's name was actually Dr. Klutz. That was like his real name. I remember I was going under, and so I'm falling asleep, and all of my inhibitions disappear, and I say, Doc, try to make it look like an accident. And he kind of smiled at me and said, okay. So that's how I got this scar. Going through the treatment was kind of amazing because the radiation therapy was to kind of this part of my body, and so my tongue, I lost my ability to taste things. If I ate like a spoonful of sugar, it would be like chewing on chalk. And so I was able to kind of turn my attention to other things. There was a lot of wasted energy that was going into tasting food. The trope with cancer is that you come to the realization that you're mortal and every day is precious, which ended up being the most damaging thing about the disease. It was because all of a sudden, like, I had to make the most of my time on this planet, otherwise I was a complete failure. That is not the way to think about yourself. Like, it only causes angst and stress and just problems, depression. So I was halfway through a chemistry thesis at that point with a great professor, but she kind of saw the cracks as well, and she's like, you really should have been born 100 years ago when you could have been a mad scientist and gotten away with it, but you can't just do whatever you want in the chemistry lab. You have to write papers, you have to make a contribution to the forefront of science.
and I just wanted to play around.
Let me show you how simple and easy it is to put your machine together.
This is one of those things that's like totally impossible to describe. You just have to kind of see it. It's gonna be quick and dirty. Mix it, mix it.
Do you want it to be red?
Yep, you do want it to be gray.
Then you have to let it dry.
Yep, you do. You know, I didn't get into music in a normal way. I started out making visual art. That was sort of my pathway into music. And I was drawn to sound. I didn't know much about how to use it or shape it yet, but I was drawn to it. So I started to make sculptures that had a sound component. That's when I really started making music, and I don't know if you would call it music. For you. But it was sound collage.
It's a little hole.
Yeah.
The shape of a circle.
Mm-hmm. What happened to your nose?
Dust fell down the stairs.
You just fell down the stairs? Let's see. I think I'm gonna put it this way. Okay. We'll bring the amplifier too to make sure it fits.
So,
I guess that was the only thing I really wasn't interested in, was recording instruments. I was so amazed at the musicality of everyday life when taken out of context. When you're in the moment, it's sort of like your brain places sound and it's, you know, with its sources in a way that kind of compartmentalizes it and destroys its expressive quality a lot. But when you record it and then bring it back to the studio or in a more controlled environment, the sounds just blossom into these things that are kind of fully alive in their own right. Okay, see that? See how that works, Ace?
yeah.
Pretty good.
So you screwed in that, but this is not. And you screwed in. It has one screw in.
Good eye, Ace. I don't know what kind of market there is for this kind of thing, because they're kind of complicated and expensive to make. I have to price it more like an art object. But since it's mass-produced, I can, you know, keep the cost down a little. Mass-produced by me. You know, there were those moments that just popped out. Like when I would listen through an hour-long recording of Walking Through the Woods, there were these moments that were just electric. There's no other way I could describe it. I thought it was pop music, but when other people heard it, they were so alienated by it. I think my hearing really diverged from other people's hearing at that point. Other people just did not hear what I was hearing. Like, that became clear to me after a while. It made me feel bad, too. I'm like, oh man, am I really going off the deep end here? So, right after I graduated college, I had, you know, this kind of strange mixed background of both science and art. And there was a department in the Art Conservation Center that was analytical. And I got involved in sort of an extended research project. And it was sort of an expose of the crappy colors that they use in colored pencils. And so I got 300 colored pencils from different manufacturers. I filed off the tip of each one. And then dissolved it in 3 different sets of solvents with different polarities to pull out different types of pigments, and then recrystallize the pigments into their pure form. And then I was able to identify all of the pigments in all of these 300 colored pencils. Yeah, it was kind of my baby. You know, on a microscopic scale, when you look at pigments in their crystalline form, they're the most incredible colors and shapes of crystals. We presented it to a conference, and it actually got colored pencil companies to think about making an archival set of colored pencils. And at that point, I was sort of working in the same building as this woman, this amazing woman named Julie Wolfe, and we hit it off, and we got to start spending a lot of time together. And she was going to move down to New York, and I'm like, cool, I never lived in New York. And I kind of tagged along. And we lived on 200th Street, on Seaman Street, between Dykeman and Cummings.
Balance. Repetition. Composition. Mirrors.
Most of all, the world is a place where parts of wholes are described within an overarching paradigm of clarity and accuracy. The context of which makes possible an underlying sense of the way it all fits together, despite our collective tendency not to conceive of it as such.
I think we started out really slow, and then Sean comes in during the tapping section, and then that's where it gets up to speed.
When I moved down with Julie, her sister was a concert violinist, was friends with Paul de Jong, who was the other half of the books. And so she introduced us. He had recently been through a divorce and watched, I don't know, like 750 movies in 1 year. And he kind of always had his recorder going. And whenever he found an interesting little piece that he wanted to save, he would make a recording of it. And so he had a stack of mini discs that was probably 100 high. And I'm like, what is on those mini discs? It's like, oh, those are my reference materials. We went through them one night, you know, just the tip of the iceberg, and I was totally amazed. It's just such a rich collection of samples. And that's essentially how the books was born.
He's
got a turtle. He's got a turtle head poking out. Turtle butt. He's got a turtle butt poking out.
Risotto?
He kept feeding me samples. He had no sense of how they could work, but had confidence that they had a quality that people would respond to, and that's how he worked. It was a process of really combining things at random and saving the stuff that worked in an unexpectedly amazing way.
The lemon of pink, flowing velvet.
It was shocking when we realized that people are actually listening to that first record, largely thanks to Pitchfork and their generosity in terms of introducing people to it. It started to have a life of its own pretty quickly.
The lemon of pink.
And we realized that, well, I guess we gotta make more records. You know, the death of the books has been hanging over my head for a long time, especially through the making of the book's last record, where the death was imminent. The band really feels like a band. They feel like there's potential here, and they put their best into it, and so I can't thank them enough for that.
I had it planned to villainize the man. Round yourself.
I'm a fan of creative destruction. And I love things that contain their opposite in some way. When we got that first picture of the Earth in its entirety, the Apollo missions sent back that picture, it totally blew people's minds to see the Earth as this kind of closed system just kind of floating in space. But the irony of that picture is ballistic missile technology that allowed the camera to get in that position to take that picture. And so at the same time we see Earth as this harboring life, we were taking that picture using a technology that could end it all. So here we are, unified, but at the same time under threat from ourselves. I started looking at culture as sort of an accelerator of shit, essentially. A shit accelerator. And I ended up writing a song about it. And by the end of writing that song, I felt like I had no choice but to build a full-sized working catapult.
By catapult, I mean trebuchet. Like, catapults are very limited in terms of their range, but if you use the extra little bit of sling that a trebuchet can give you, you can launch the shit much further. And by shit, I don't mean actual shit, because that's kind of useful as compost. I mean, like stuff that people... I'm just going to invite all my friends to kind of bring the stuff that they really wish they didn't have to launch.
Okay. Yeah, I think it's going to be a potluck. So, yeah, anything that's fresh in the garden. Oh, it'll be safe. I'm going to set it up out in the corner of the yard. Well, nothing that's going to break into a million pieces. Not a good idea. You want to pull on this a little bit?
It's so funny. Yeah.
All right, it's Eric's birthday today, everybody.
No, they're lighting it on fire.
Does this do happy birthday?
It's not.
3, 2, 1!
Happy birthday!
Oh, you gotta take a taste of your cake. There you go. Ah, it's too bad.
Ooh, that looks
delicious.
Really want to get...
Still coming down.
All right, what's next?
Fun through the air. Symbolic. So. This is the computer Nick made the Way Out album on.
All right.
And now it's going out. And now it's going. Now it's fully going being out. Jettisoned out of his life.
All right, guys.
Let's do it.
Let's make it This could be dangerous.
You can only hope.
This could be dangerous.
Take an extra step back on this one.
Creative destruction.
Help me lift this up.
Figure out a way to move on and celebrate at the same time. I did so many projects on that computer. All the weight of that past work started to disappear,
No, take it. I don't need.
which was such a relief. Everything becomes a symbol. Even, the tiniest little pencil shaving becomes a symbol of some kind. It means something, especially if you're able to change the context surrounding it. And I think, when I was a student here, and I was working in labs like this, I became really drawn to those moments that had this sort of, well, it's not sort of, it's like actual meaning, like real meaning. Like, I believe in real meaning. I think it exists. Yeah, that's what we want. Dichloroethane. It's one of those halogenated hydrocarbons. Nasty, nasty, nasty. So Anchor came out about a year ago now, and we did a lot of touring right after the album came out, and it was our best tour. It was just a blast across the board. The band was just killing. The album didn't sell particularly well, mostly because a guy over at Pitchfork gave it a terrible review. But it sort of stopped sales dead before they really started. Hey, and then you have to coat the sample. This crazy device. This is what vaporizes gold and palladium and kind of showers it down on your sample. Put this in here. Compressed argon. Power. Pump. Let's see. Unfortunately, my middle son Asa was diagnosed with Hodgkin's disease late last year, and went through a number of surgeries to try to remove the tumors that he had in his neck. Ultimately, surgery didn't work, so I needed to go through chemotherapy starting in January. The kind of Hodgkin's disease that Asa had was exactly the same kind of variant that I had back in the day. And there's no explanation for why that is. We talked to a lot of geneticists and, oncologists, and they're like, they just threw up their hands. They're like, that is an unbelievable coincidence. We have no idea how a mechanism could work that would actually transfer the cancer from one generation to another, or make you susceptible to the same cancer in the same way. Although it's obviously not a coincidence. So to have that connection with Asa is really interesting. It's we kind of look at each other in a different way now. And really satisfying to see his eyebrows grow back in. That's a beautiful thing. I've sort of lost my will to tour for the time being because my kids are growing up, and I don't want to miss that. I really don't want to miss that. It's so fleeting. They change so much from day to day and month to month. I would really rather take the time away from my career to really enjoy that and focus on things that keep me at home, do more soundtrack work. And my wife and I have this idea of building a residency program up at our place now, which I think would be spectacular and something that the whole family could participate in. I'm always looking for those moments that are signifiers for a moment in time or a moment in our lives as a family, or that we can take a step back and view the activity not only as what it literally is, but as sort of a rite of passage. It's funny where you find those things.
I'm not gonna buy honey, I'll tell you that. I'm not gonna buy honey. And
Art gives us a chance to kind of reestablish, real kind of microscopic, everyday meaning in our lives.
About that. Should I put it over here?
don't shake the table.
It's good.
You'll notice yourself smiling with delight over things you once paid no attention to. Streetlights on the river, 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 streetlights on the river. Smoke rising from a chimney, 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 smoke rising from a chimney. Red roofs in the trees, 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 red roofs in the trees. My dog's eyes, 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 my dog's eyes. Water being cut at the bow of a boat, water being cut at the bow of a boat, water being cut at the bow of a boat, water being cut at the bow of a boat. Looking into deep clear water, looking into deep clear water, looking into deep clear water, looking into deep clear water. Velvet, red velvet, red velvet, red velvet, red velvet, red velvet. The moon in the clouds, 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 the moon in the clouds. These were children who hadn't yet lost their sense of wonder. These were children who hadn't yet lost their sense of wonder. These were children who hadn't yet lost their sense of wonder. These were children who hadn't yet lost their sense of wonder. They hadn't become unseeing and unfeeling. 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 A fast train rushing, 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 a fast train rushing. If children were asked the same question today, if children were asked the same question today, their answers would reflect a more mechanized world. 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 But I'm sure they'd still have that sense of wonder. But I'm sure they'd still have that sense of wonder.